Hi everyone, this is Julia from Motivation Club TV, connecting people to help people all over the world to motivate, inspire, support, and live to our fullest potential. Today's topic is suicide, suicide awareness, and suicide prevention. And today I have Steve Blampied. It's an absolute pleasure to have him here today. Thank you, Steve. A bit about Steve before we start. He suffered with severe depression to the point of being suicidal from the age of 16. Although he mostly recovered after being diagnosed and treated for multiple food allergies, he still lived with depression and anxiety on and off for nearly 20 years. This gave him a very real understanding of living with unwanted negative feelings and emotions, and to be effectively trapped in a mind that feels like it doesn't work like other people's. In an attempt to have a normal life, he followed a career path in IT, communications, and marketing. But in 2006, after career trouble had left him unemployed and spiraling downwards, he attended a course in EFT, which is emotional freedom technique, which was the beginning of a whole new chapter in his life. Along with his emotional issues, Steve had also suffered a serious accident at the age of 19, which led to chronic pain. However, a single session of EFT during his training eliminated the pain overnight, and from that sudden realization of the power of the mind, he spent a large amount of his spare time studying, training, and working as a coach and therapist. He now works with clients internationally, and as he puts it, using tools you've never heard of to make changes you will not believe. Since 2014, Steve has also worked in partnership with his wife, Linda, who is a personal fitness consultant, providing a true mind and body transformation service. Steve, it is an absolute pleasure to have you with me today. There is so much that we can learn from you, and I'm really looking forward to exploring this topic with you today. Thank you for being here.
Well, thank you for inviting me, Julia.
Yeah, my pleasure.
It's an honor to be on here.
Thank you. To start with, I was hoping that you could share the ins and outs of your journey through suicide.
Okay, the part that really stands out for me, I mean, most people that go through this kind of thing, there are some, there is a long time here. You know, it's not something that just happens overnight. There's a build up to it, and there are peaks and troughs. You know, there are peak moments where it's, you know, it's almost too much, and then it fades away and it comes back, and there tends to be a flow. So really the peak time for me was I was about 16, and I mean I'd been suffering for as long as I remember. I'd felt different. I was suffering from, I did now what we would recognize as social anxiety, but back then, I'm not going to say how old I am, but you can figure that out. But back then, social anxiety wasn't understood. And so I kind of constructed this world for myself where I just reached a point at around about 16 where I made a decision, and I decided that the only solution was to finish it.
Yeah.
And it's almost, I think from talking to clients and people that have been through this, it's quite common to actually, the emotions fade away, and you reach a point where you just go, this has to happen.
Yeah.
This is the only solution out of this problem, and this is what I need to do. And it was my mother that was the one that basically caught me in time. And you know, again, this was kind of, it was all new, and I live on a small island as well, which so you know, I live in an island in the Channel Islands, which is between the UK and France, and it's small island mentality. There wasn't kind of, it's not like that we had a lot of resources available to us. It was kind of, so they took me to the family GP, the family doctor, and back then they were just kind of getting into understanding the food allergies and food intolerances. And luckily, my family doctor was on the forefront, was interested in that, and said, let's try. Let's see if you've got some food allergies. And I had a load of testing done, and they determined that I had all these food allergies that were affecting my emotional state. And through that treatment and desensitization treatment over several years, that was dealt with, which left me able to function in the world, but it never resolved the deep kind of underlying stuff that was left over from that. So I lived my life kind of with this shadow hanging over me, and kind of dipping in and out of depressed states, but never quite getting back to that level again. And then, like you said in the intro, it wasn't actually until I was pushed over an edge again. When I reached that peak kind of state, when I had some career trouble that happened, which wasn't my fault, and all the feelings around that tipped me back over. And I realized that there had to be a solution here. Luckily, I spotted it, and I realized, there has to be an answer to this. I don't want to live like this. I don't want to live going in and out of this state and treating, upsetting the people around me and causing all this stuff around me. I didn't want to live like that. So I went to Google. I went to the internet, and found this thing called tapping, which is emotional freedom technique, or EFT. And somehow the universe aligned, and there was a course run on EFT in this little island that I live in, at basically the same time. It was just serendipity that it was there. And like you said, I did the course, totally transformed how I understood how my mind was working. And I realized, and this is something I say to clients all the time, I realized I wasn't broken. That's huge to find out that actually you're not broken. There's some stuff going on that you didn't understand.
Yeah.
And from there, it became a process of kind of constructing a new life that didn't have that in there, which is what I've done. And luckily now I get to help other people because I've been through it.
Beautiful. Thank you so much.
That's kind of it.
Yeah, beautiful. Thank you so much for sharing that. If I could take you back to that space, if possible, what was happening for you in the weeks leading up to those suicide attempts?
It's all a bit of a blur, to be honest. I remember it more. For a long time, I couldn't have told you. In fact, for a long time, I didn't even remember what age I was.
Yeah.
And I had it all wrong. I had all the details completely wrong about the whole thing. And it wasn't until some of the work that I've done over the years, and talking to people, I've actually been able to piece together the story in more detail. But to be honest, I was in such a different state of mind back then, that I can't even remember most of it. I really can't. It's just I've got a rough kind of vague image of it, and I remember the feelings. I'm a what some people might call a kinesthetic person. I work with feelings more than anything. So I remember the feelings of that time, more than anything else. And the feelings of frustration and despair and confusion and anger and sadness and all this melting pot of stuff that was going on back then, that just kind of just made life unbearable, absolutely unbearable. Yeah. So that's really what stands out for me. It's the feelings of it, of that kind of, there is just no way that I could live like this. I just could not live like this any longer. And and also, a lot of people, they create reasons, and they create evidence to back up how they're feeling. And so they look at, certainly I did. I looked at the people around me, how I was upsetting my family, and the stress that I was causing, and that was added into it. It was a case of, the best thing I could do here would be to not be here, You know, it would hurt for a while, but then I'd stop putting everybody through this stuff.
Yeah.
You know, and you rationalize all of this stuff because the feelings are there, and your mind is trying to rationalize it and come up with an explanation and with a plan. And so yeah, that's all in there as well.
On that note, how did your friends and family react to your suicide attempt?
My friends never knew.
Yep.
We never spoke about it outside of the house.
Yep.
It was my family, and particularly my mum. And you know, obviously, anybody that hasn't been through it just does not understand.
Yeah.
You know, there is no way anybody can ever understand this unless they've been through it.
Yeah.
You know, and I think that's why, certainly from a therapy point of view, you know, even a therapist who's never experienced it can never really understand what it was like.
Yeah.
So there was a lot of confusion, and there was a lot of hurt and a lot of anger, and all the kind of normal range of emotions that you would expect when somebody that you care about is talking like this and behaving like this and doing these things. You know, I can't imagine what it must have been like for them, you know.
Yeah. Thank you very much. How did you look in our pre-chat? And for everyone in the audience, I always have a chat to everyone that I'm interviewing beforehand. Steve shared with me that he totally dealt with this to the point that he was actually thankful it had happened for where he is in life. And Steve, I'd love to explore that with you. How did you get to this point?
Like I say, I mean, I lived with this on and off for a long time, and it was really that realization. I was, well, I was 35 before I kind of really started to deal with things.
Yeah.
And just the understanding that I could change this really, really fired me up. And from that point on, I was like, you know what, I'm going to beat this completely. I'm not going to live like this. I'm going to be normal. Yeah, no such thing. But you know, I fought really hard, and I worked hard, and I learned everything I could. I studied, you know, every kind of therapeutic method. I dived into psychology books. I was, you know, I just went everywhere I could to really, really get to the root of this. And I did. And I beat it. And then I realized that if I could do this, and if I knew how, and I had such a deep understanding, I naturally kind of started helping other people. And of course, you know, you train as a therapist, like whether it's EFT or NLP or hypnosis or whatever. You train and you start working with it, you know, because it's like you've got this toolkit, and once you start to see changes in people's lives, and I remember one particular case, and it was really the first time I'd ever come across somebody else who was suicidal. And it was a Sunday afternoon, and somebody called me and said, can you come now? My husband is just in such a state, I don't think he's going to see the day out. Can you come now? And I dropped everything, and I drove to the house, and I went to see the guy. And, you know, in a couple of hours, I got him out of that peak state he was in. I got him out of that place. And several months later, I'm welling up over this one because it still gets to me. Several months later, I was at a wedding, and I felt a hand on my shoulder, and I turned around, and it was the guy. And he said, I just need you to know that you saved my life. And it's just like,
Yeah.
What do you do with that? You know, that's, how can I not do this? How could I not do this stuff? It's impossible, you know, it's impossible to not help people when you've got these tools and these skills. And I am so thankful for that, because if I hadn't been through everything I've been through, I wouldn't be doing what I'm doing, and I wouldn't have all of those people who I've now helped. I'd be living some potentially living some mediocre life, with a normal life, with a normal job, and I wouldn't be getting all of this stuff that I get to do now. I'm so thankful for having been through it. The insight and the person that all of that has made me. I just can't imagine how I could have this any other way. I will talk about this to anybody. I would never hide any of this, because it's such an integral part of who I am, and of every person that I have been able to help, and not just with suicide, but with everything else. I deal with every human emotion that there is. All of those people would not have received that help if it hadn't have been for what I went through. And I'll tell you, that was a small price to pay for the good that has come out of it. I'd do it again. I'd do it again tomorrow.
Thank you. Thank you so much for sharing that. It's extremely inspiring. What would you say is the biggest lesson that you have learned from all of this?
You're not broken.
Yeah.
The mind gets itself into can get itself into a mess sometimes. It means well. Your mind is always trying to solve problems. It's always trying to keep you alive and keep you and sort of is learning and is adapting. But sometimes it gets it wrong. And if you're going through this kind of stuff, it's actually you can, first of all, you can always change it. You can always recover from it. It might not feel like that right now, but you've only got to look at the people out there who've done it like me. There is evidence that you can change. That's the nature of our mind. There's a thing called neuroplasticity, which we're kind of learning about now, with the idea that the mind is able to change at any time. So all of this, all of the stuff and all of the feelings, they're just a result of your mind having made some miscalculations along the way and responded in ways that don't serve you. And once you understand that, once you understand that that's what's going on, you can change it. You have to find the way to do it and the approach, but you can always change it.
Awesome. That's very important. Very, very important. What would be your advice to anyone experiencing suicidal thoughts or thinking about suicide?
Okay. It's difficult to give a blanket answer to that.
Yeah.
Because, everybody's situation is different. I mean, just the word itself, we say suicide as if it's just this one thing, but there are so many facets to that. What you've got to look at what got you there.
Yeah.
You've got to look at the you think the Japanese warriors, they would commit harikiri. They would commit suicide intentionally, on purpose, for honor or to protest something. There are people that do it for political reasons. So suicide itself as a word has many meanings.
Yeah.
What we're really kind of talking about here, though, is when your emotional state has got you to the point where you feel that you need to end it. So what you need to do is you need to look at that emotional state. You need to get help, because you can't do it alone. I know all too well that you will not do this alone. And ideally, find somebody else who really knows what it's like. Yeah. And if you could, find those moments of clarity, because you'll get those moments of clarity where you'll be thinking, what's going on here? Grab those moments of clarity. Find somebody else who's been through it. Find somebody that can give you that support, who understands exactly where you are. And just be easy on yourself as well. It's it's easy to think that there is something wrong with you, that you're broken. But trust me, you're not broken. You're not broken. You're just human. This is part of being human. You are anybody who is experiencing suicidal thoughts is a normal human being who has just got themselves into that state. Find somebody who specializes in it. Find somebody to talk to. Talking to friends and family doesn't really help generally, because they don't understand.
Yeah.
And there's emotional stuff behind it. Go and find somebody that independent. You know, you've got the internet out there now. You can find support groups of people who've been through this. You can find therapists that will help you. You can find programs. There's so much stuff out there. If you want to turn it around, you can do it. You've just got to find the right people. I say it's hard to answer that question without being face to face with somebody and understanding how they've got to where they are. And that's a very general answer, and I don't normally like general answers, but you know, in this situation, that's the best I can kind of give you.
Thank you nonetheless, because that was a very good answer to start off with, and then to encourage people to speak to someone who has been through the same thing. That's very important too, because no one understands suicide like someone who has been through it and come out the other end.
Yeah, absolutely.
Leading from that though, what is your advice for people who have recovered from suicide?
Okay. We mentioned this in the pre-talk actually, because I spotted you've got a piano behind you.
Yeah.
You know this is something that I say to people. If you've been through anything, then you've learned how to do it. So if you learn the piano when you're a young child, and then you don't touch it for 30 years, you can sit in front of a piano and you will be able to work out how to play that piano, and it will take you far less time to get to be able to play than it would somebody who'd never played before, because although you hadn't used those skills over a period of time, you still had the core ability so inside you of how to do it. And I firmly believe that anybody that's experienced any kind of intense emotional problem or intense thing like suicide, they have that ability. Whether it's that they had some kind of innate ability to do it beforehand, I don't know, but certainly anyone that's been through it has the ability to go back there. So even if you consider yourself to be fully recovered, you need to just be aware that you might have the ability to go back there if you're not vigilant, if you're not watching for it. So just be aware and look after yourself. Perhaps just have that in the back of your mind when you start to notice yourself going in that direction. Just be aware that you are more likely to end up there than somebody who had never been there before.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Yes, that does.
It's just that kind of awareness that you've got. It sounds crazy, but you've got a skill. You've actually developed the skill of being able to do it.
Yes,
which is kind of a strange way to look at it, but
I think because we were discussing neuroplasticity before, you've got a neural pathway for that behavior, for that, you know, as you mentioned, use the word skill. And that might be dormant for a very long time, but it can get fired up again. That's just brain science.
Absolutely.
That's just the way it is.
Yeah.
So that is very, very valuable advice. Thank you so much. All of this is such fascinating stuff. I'm wondering if you could share a bit more about what you do as a coach and how people can get in touch with you if they feel inspired and really touched by your story.
Okay. I mean, as a coach, my methods are certainly, with suicide. My methods are initially getting people out of that crisis. You know, that initial crisis where you're in it.
Yeah.
The first thing I do is I get you out of that.
Yeah.
Because you can't make any decisions about how you want to approach this if you're in that kind of that almost fight or flight mode.
Yeah.
You know, when you're in that completely encompassing state, you're not thinking clearly, you're not thinking straight. So the first thing to do is get out of that. There are lots of ways to do that. Personally, I use things like NLP, hypnosis. There's an amazing technique which has transformed my practice called PS Tech, PSTEC, which are some audio tracks and a system designed by a guy from the UK, Tim Fasackley, and just a wonderful system. You can actually download it for free.
Awesome.
And you use the process with the instructions, and it gets you out of that initial hyper emotional state.
Yes.
And then it's a case of looking at how you got there, and looking at the things in your life that got you there, whether it's a response to childhood issues, something that happened to you when you were small that you've built your life around, which we tend to do, or whether it's something more direct that's happening in your life right now, whether what you can change to stop you going back there again. So get out of that initial emotional state, and then you have to look at the bigger picture of what got you there and what can you adapt. For some people, the best thing that they could do once they're out of it, the best thing they can do is to find a purpose.
Yeah.
Find something that drives them forward to that they need to, that can be all encompassing. So that's where the coaching element comes in. It's a case of how are we going to adapt your life here so that you don't ever find yourself in that situation again. What things do we need to change? So that's really my method, without going into too much kind of technical detail. So, if I'm always happy to talk to people. If anybody wants to reach out to me, I'm always here. I have there's a web address you can go to, which actually takes you straight to my Facebook page, mindcoach.me. If you go to mindcoach, that's one word, .me, that takes you straight into my Facebook page, and you can message me from there. And I respond to everybody personally. So I'm happy to do that. I've also run there's a Facebook group that I've just set up off there where I'm giving kind of free coaching advice. It's not just around suicide, it's around everything to do with the mind and performance, and it's kind of my place just that I send people where they can find out who I am, and build that kind of relationship. And from there, of course, I offer every kind of service you could need, one-on-one coaching, consulting. I've got packages, all kinds of stuff. Whatever you need is there. So really, that's the best way to reach me.
Yeah, brilliant. And I'll include all of those links with the interview wherever we post it. The links will be above or below. Cool. So it'll be wonderful if you in the audience would get in touch with Steve. A very inspiring story. We're getting to the end of our time here today, Steve. And I've really enjoyed this. It's been very eye-opening and very inspiring. Thank you so much. I wanted to know, what's your final message in regards to suicide?
My final message. It comes back around to understanding that, above all, understanding that you're not broken. I'm going to say this to anybody out there that is feeling this way now, right? You are not broken. Whatever is going on, whatever you're feeling right now, the very fact that you're feeling stuff, that is what it is to be human. Humans have the ability to feel good things and bad things, and to get themselves into situations, and to get themselves out of situations as well, right? You're not broken, you're just where you are. And you can go wherever you want from this point. And it's entirely up to you. So really, that's kind of the core of this. The answer is out there. There are answers out there. You will find people that can help you. Just decide if this is what you want to do. If you want out of this, find those people, make the decision, and you will get through it.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Steve. so grateful for your time here today, and thank you to everyone watching. If you know anyone who is experiencing suicidal thoughts, please share this video with them. You know, we have an epidemic at the moment where, you know, we've got a 3-to-1 in Australia, men to women. Share it with the guy next door, the person sitting next to you, anyone that you know that might be not feeling that well. And because I think this is very valuable information and knowledge that needs to be shared. We all have a responsibility. We all do have a responsibility for each other and to look after each other. And this is where it starts, by connecting people with people that can help. So that's a wrap, guys. It's been an absolute pleasure to share this with you. And thank you, Steve. Thank you. It's been such a pleasure to spend this time with you. I really appreciate it. All of the links will be added. Please touch base with Steve and jump on to his Facebook group as well and get some value out of that. That's it. That's a wrap, guys. Have a great day and all my love. Bye.
Bye.